What's up, guys? So with Disney Plus's What If show right around the corner, and the Loki series being all wrapped up, I figured I'd go over one of my favorite what if stories. And this story asks, what if Thor was raised by frost giants? Which I think is a really interesting concept. You probably know that Loki is a frost giant who was raised by Asgardians, so it switches around the roles. But to make sure this makes sense to you, I'll give you some background on how in comics, Loki becomes Odin's son. And it is pretty similar to how the MCU presented it, with Odin defeating the frost giants, then taking baby Loki home with him. The main difference between the MCU and the comics is that in the MCU, Odin's plan was to use Loki as a bargaining chip for peace between the frost giants, but in the comics, Odin took Loki because the spirit of his father, Thor, was essentially haunting him and told him that you will kill a new father and you need to then adopt his son and raise him as your own, or I'll keep haunting you. So after Odin slays the frost giant Loki, Odin is then attacked by a young Loki, who's pretty mad that his father was just killed in front of him, but Odin knows immediately that this is the child his father was talking about, and he takes him home to Asgard and raises him as his son. Now I do think there was another weird twist to the story in comics that it was actually Loki traveling back in time to manipulate everything so that Odin does adopt him. But let's not get into that. It gets kind of weird and confusing. So getting into the what if story, it opens almost the exact same way that it happened in the original comic story. However, instead of Odin killing Loki, it is actually Loki who kills Odin in this fight. And with Asgard's most powerful warrior now dead, the Frost Giants make their way to Asgard to conquer it. They break in the door of the palace where they meet Odin's wife, Freya, who attacks the Frost Giants in an attempt to protect a young Thor. And although she's able to stab one right in the kneecap, she is eventually taken prisoner. And Loki, being all evil and whatnot, he doesn't kill her. He just plans on imprisoning her just to make her suffer more. This is when we get a young Thor who jumps in immediately and attacks Loki. But at this point, he's just a kid, so he doesn't put up much of a fight. But Thor's courage actually impresses Loki, and he decides to take him home and raise him as his son. Now, it's not shown on panel, but it is kind of important later for the story. The Frost Giants completely destroy Asgard. They just turn it into rubble and then abandon it. But the story then jumps to where Thor is being held, which is a small prison-like room where he gets a visit from a young Loki, who gives Thor a necklace that he carved himself as a gift, and Loki and Thor almost immediately start to have this brotherly relationship. Thor likes Loki because he's the only frost giant to show him kindness, and Loki, who's basically already hated by everyone, likes Thor because he's nice to him. We then jump a few years into the future, and we see that Thor and Loki are training to become warriors, and they're fighting against a big old frost monster. They have to defeat this monster or be killed. Loki, seeing that many other warriors beside him just continue to die while attacking this beast, he comes up with the idea of using one of his illusions to trick the monster. Unfortunately, the monster doesn't fall for it. Like, not even a little bit. And he grabs and just eats Loki. But big brother Thor is not going to let his little brother get eaten. So he jumps right into the mouth of the beast, goes down his stomach like a slide, and then slices the monster's belly wide open. And Loki and Thor fall out of the side of the beast. And when they get out of this monster's belly, Thor's pretty proud of himself, as he should be. While Loki's being Loki, he's upset that his plan didn't work. But it only gets worse from there, when their father comes up and tells Thor, you should have just let Loki die, because using illusions in a fight is deceitful and mischievous, and this should shame Loki and all the other frost giants, including the king. This does lead to some cracks already forming in Thor and Loki's relationship. Thor is clearly proving to be more worthy of the two brothers and winning the affection and attention of his father, even though Thor is not a frost giant. Loki even goes as far as saying to Thor that he might one day hand down his weapon to him, the giant hammer called Ice Crusher. Now this statement does cause a little turbulence in the kingdom from Loki's troops, who might not be too excited to see their next king be a non-frost giant. But later on that night, we see Loki clearing his mind, going for a walk in the castle, when he stumbles across a prisoner. This prisoner sees the sadness that Loki is carrying. And of course, this prisoner turns out to be Freya, Thor's mother. And Freya, who's been alone in herself for years now, pushes Loki to talk to her about his problems, just because she desperately wants to talk to someone. He forms this new relationship with Freya, and the two begin to share a strong bond. And Loki continues to go down to her cell for the next few years just to talk with her. And while he's there, she teaches him magic, and he begins to hone his skills. As the years go on, Loki really begins to see her as a mother figure. Thor has no idea that Freya is actually being held prisoner here. He's under the belief that she died the day that the Frost Giants invaded Asgard. And Loki actually starts to feel guilty that he doesn't tell Freya or Thor that her son and Thor's mom is still alive. But because of Loki's insecurities, he fears that Freya, knowing that Thor is still alive, would then forget about her relationship with Loki to be with Thor. So when Loki becomes a young adult, he comes to Freya one day with an idea that he wants to escape with Freya by breaking her out of jail, traveling to Asgard, then starting a new life on Earth using the Bifrost Bridge. Freya initially rejects this idea, fearing for Loki's safety if he betrayed his father. And while Loki is talking with Freya, at the same time, Loki is talking with Thor, asking him to strike down one of his longtime warriors, because he's beginning to sow doubts in Laufey's leadership as a king, because Laufey is still pushing for Thor to take over as king of the Frost Giants. So Thor attacks him, and he makes pretty quick work of him. And after Thor wins, he is finally awarded with the Ice Crusher hammer. And Thor, with the hammer, now has cemented his right to be the heir to the throne once Laufey passes away. But right after, Laufey gets word of an escaped prisoner and takes Thor with him to Asgard to find Freya, who Thor doesn't understand yet that they're looking for his own mother. And just as Freya is about to conjure the Bifrost Bridge, Laufey grabs Loki by the throat, and fearing for his life, Loki stabs his dad right in the eye, killing him. And Thor, in his anger, seeing his father killed, goes to shoot a beam of ice at Loki. Before Loki can be struck, he's thrown out of the way by Freya, who is then struck by the ice beam. Loki screams at Thor, and Freya, hearing Thor's name, understands that her son is still alive, although he just killed her. She dies shortly after from Thor's ice beam blast. You may notice the lightning coming from Thor's hammer, and this is because Thor, even though he's being raised by frost giants, he's still the god of thunder, so he still has all the original powers, just without his classic hammer. So Thor's pretty mad now. 1, his father just died. 2, he just killed his own mother. And 3, Loki knew that his mother was still alive and didn't tell him. So at this point, Thor thinks, maybe I should just keep the killings going on. And he goes to strike down Loki. But Loki tells Thor in his final moments that he just wanted to find his own path. And Thor, taking pity on his brother, lets him live. And they finish opening the Bifrost Bridge, and Thor allows Loki to leave to find his own path. But Thor stays with the Frost Giants to take over as king and protect them. So Loki ends up traveling to Earth, and he creates a nice family with a wife and kids, and he actually becomes a superhero on Earth. Although Thor will still say what's up every once in a while by sending some lightning storms his way. And that's what would have happened if Thor was raised by Loki's real dad. I'm going to wrap up this video now. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, make sure you slap that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. And see you guys in the next one. Peace.